Today we're going to discuss Ganapati Upanishad, and it's a favorite deity, Ishta Devata for Kumud and myself, and it's one of the most widely worshipped deity in the Hindu pantheon around the world. Not only Ganesha is worshipped in India, but wherever Indians are moved in different parts of the world, the Ganesh Puja goes on all the time. In addition to that, even non-Hindus in the countries like Nepal, Bhutan, Tibet, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, there's Burma, there is Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, Japan, Philippines, Turkey, Mexico, etc., etc. Ganesha is worshipped all the time. Now, Ganesha is not a Rigvedic deity. You can talk about it, Rigvedic deity some other time, or today if we have time. But at the same time, in Rigveda, which is written around 1500 to 200 BC, 2000 BC, there is a deity named addressed as Brahmanaspati in the verse 2.23.1. Brahmanaspati, representing a leader of the groups, Ganapati. So I think that probably represents Ganapati, because many of the subsequent publications of Rigveda did start with the prayer on the top, Om Gam Ganapate Enma. But that's the closest I can come up with the reference in Rigveda. The Ganesha that we're going to study is well recognized for his intellect and wisdom. And he literally is considered as a vortex of consciousness, both in Saguna and Nirguna form. It is placed in Atharva Veda, which is written around 1200 to 900 BCE, because years might vary, written by Atharvana, also known as Angir or Ganak. Now, Ganesha is closest to the material plane of human consciousness, most easily connected, and most capable to assist us in our day-to-day activities and address our concerns for all human beings. I can tell you from our personal experiences. And that's the reason for Kumud and myself, Ganesha is the Ishta Devata. Now, if you imagine or take the picture of Ganesha in front of your eyes closed, you can see he's holding a noose in his hand that indeed draws the devotees close to him. And he uses that very noose to tie up the obstacles as well. And he didn't come from Texas, trust me. He constantly confers on us his blessings, keeping us happy, protecting us from the obstacles, and taking away pain and grief. And from personal experience, I can tell you that it may sound weird or funny that he occasionally places his utmost devotees in the places of obstacles. Sometimes you wonder, is he really doing something for me? But that is in order to block us in going in the wrong direction and forcing us to take a different path in our life. And then once you have changed your path, it guides us back again into the right track and advancement. And he certainly has a wonderful knack of unweaving the uncomplicated situations life and making it simple for the devotees. And he indeed, we can all establish a personal relationship through total devotion, regular worship, and a very strict discipline. If I would really summarize in three things, I would say he is Sukha Karta, leads to happiness. He is Vigna Harta, he protects us from calamities, as he is Dukkha Harta as well, takes away all the pain and suffering. So something that telling you from the bottom of my heart. Now, Ganesha is the god of learning and the most learned of gods. He transcribed the Mahabharata as was narrated to him by Vyasa. As a matter of fact, Vyasa went to Brahmadev asking for his references. Who would be the right person to write Mahabharata, which is so complicated, but I want to summarize them historically at the same time, get education to my devotees who will come after me in centuries. Who would be the right person to do that? And Brahmadeva said that only person who can handle that gargantuan task is Ganesha. And Ganesha, with his busy schedule, he said only can accept it if Vyasa can keep up with the speed of his narration to match my speed of writing. He basically wanted to shape him up, make sure he was not wasting Ganesha's time. And Vyasa himself put one more condition. Yes, I'll do that according to you, except you have to transcribe only after you understand exactly the total meaning of what I'm trying dictating at that time. Oh, that's how the team went on to write down the Mahabharata. Lord Ganesha, that we're going to study over the next few sessions, he loves to dance, but of course he's inherited, who is the son of Parvati and Shiva. Parvati is famous for her dance of Lasya, and Shiva, as you know, is famous for his dance called Tandava, of course. He is, of course, a tremendous dancer because of that. And virtuous Ganesha, leads a very exemplary life. And the good thing about it, from my point of view, I'm sure you'd find it yourself too, his physique is such that you don't have to worry about it. He looks like one of our friends. He's an affable charm, endears himself to everyone. He feels like a dear friend than a god, and I feel most comfortable. And only one thing I can tell you about him is that Ganesha is never offended when the mistakes are made by the devotees, and I've made umpteen of them. But he's very much offended if somebody exhibits malice, tendency to hurt anybody else. So don't worry about making mistakes, but Ganesha will take care of you. And I'm telling you from my experience. Now, if you read various Puranas, you'll find that Ganesha's birthday happens to be in different months. How so, Dr. Sane, you'll ask me. Well, if you see in one Purana, you'll see in Ganesh Purana, number 82, Ganesha is recorded as birthday to be Chaturthi Shuddha Bhadrapad. Bhadrapad Shuddha Chaturthi. If you go to Mudgal Purana 2, his birthday is Jeshta Shuddha Chaturthi. You go to Mudgal Purana 7, the birthday is Magha Shuddha Chaturthi. Now, more you think about it, his birth date is not Tithi, but to me, that is Sthiti. Tithi, Sthiti. Sthiti means avastha. Ganesha is always in the Chaturthi Sthiti. What do you mean by Chaturthi Sthiti? You see, if you remember, as we'll study the Upanishad, there are about 14 mantras, but we'll get to that in a moment. In the 6th mantra, you talk about Tvam avastha trayatita. Tvam avastha, state of mind. Traya, 3. Tita, atita. That means you're beyond the 3 states that we all of us knew. So you are in the 4th sthiti. What are the various sthitis that we have? We as human beings are awake, called Jagruti in Sanskrit. When we carry out our day-to-day activities in the daytime and sometimes at night too, when we go to sleep, we enter the dream state, swapna, and then further down during the sleep, you go in the deep sleep called Sushupti state. So when we are awake, there are objects and we have perception of the objects. When we are dreaming, is perception of the objects without there being the objects. At the same time, remember, when we are in the dream state, our physiology of the body is still functioning. How so? If I'm dreaming that I'm being chased in Serengeti Plains by the tiger, I'm running fast, I'm sweating, my pulse has quickened, my blood pressure has gone up, my body temperature has gone up, I'm breathing heavily. And as a matter of fact, if you happen to have all the equipment around you attached when you're asleep, you'll indeed will record it as the truth. So even when you're dreaming, without the things being there, but you are having perception of those things, you are still showing the changes on your biological body measurement. So that is the swapna state. The deep state, what happens? They're neither the objects nor the perceptions. Or there's an experience during that deep sleep, which is totally different than other two. Very important experience. Now, once again, let me repeat. Deep sleep state is not non-existence. It is actually a true experience of joy and general well-being, because during the deep sleep, next to us is the seed of consciousness or seed of awareness that is the one that keeps us sentient. That is the seed of consciousness. If you don't fulfill your goals of this life of becoming, to recognizing your true nature and become one with Brahman, will continue to multiple births afterwards because you're not completed your education. So you're talking about awake, dream state, and the deep sleep stage, when the experience of association with the seed of consciousness next to that. And because of that association alone, my friends, when you are in deep sleep, next day morning when you get up, you feel refreshed, you feel recharged, you get re-energized because of the close association with the seed of consciousness. Now, these are three sthitis. But Dr. Sane, you just mentioned Chaturthi sthiti, and avastha trayatita. And that sthiti is called Turiya avastha. That is a Turiya avastha, is you are in the state or in company of that seed of consciousness. So Ganesha is always the vortex of consciousness. He's always in the Turiya or Chaturthi sthiti. Now, when do we get that Turiya sthiti? Even when we are not enlightened. I'm glad you asked that question. That you get when you are doing the japa. We talked about japa series, and hopefully we can have a chance discussion somewhere down. When you are doing japa, Om Gam Ganapate Namaha, Om Gam Ganapate Namaha, Om Gam Ganapate Namaha. Now, when we are singing japa one after the other, your mind is focused on that mantra. Nothing ever comes in between the two mantras. During that pregnant pause, pregnant silence between the two mantras, that is the Turiya sthiti that we are in. Because typically our mind is a mind which always oscillates, moves from one subject to another. For example, if I were to give an example, I was talking with my grandson last night, and if you happen to see from your window a BMW car driving outside, your mind will be immediately directed to that beautiful BMW car. And then you think about, came from Germany. And then, then we talk about Hitler. And then you talk about Nazi. Your mind goes in 25 different directions. Wherein if your mind is concentrated on mantras alone, Om Gam Ganapate Namaha, Om Gam, during that quiet phase, that is when we are in direct company of the consciousness. So that is the Turiya Avastha. Before we get going, there are 24 incarnations of Ganesha and various Puranas, but the commonest one are repeated over and over: Vakratunda, Mahadara. But don't worry about it. All those things, when at the end of the sessions, whatever number of discourses are, I'll be happy to give a small book that Kumud and myself put together for you to keep it as your reference. And before we get going, I just want to mention Lord Ganesha and Lord Krishna has amazingly quite a few similarities about their birth. How so? Well, each one of them has two mothers. Wait a minute, can you explain that? Well, everybody remembers that for Krishna, mother was Devaki, birth mother, but Vasudeva had to carry through the flooded river across to Vrindavan, where Yashoda was her foster mother. So you have Devaki and Yashoda. Ganesha also is called Dvai Matur. Dvai means two, Matur means two mothers. Of that reason, called Gangeya, because considered also son of Ganga. What happened was both Parvati and Ganga are considered his mothers. So there's a story where Parvati is impatient because her son Kartikeya has left the house and Lord Shiva has gone to find out wherever he is. You know how the little boys are. And some of us never grow up from being little boys. We always go little boys. So she was impatient and she created with her own hands a beautiful doll made up of nice soft mud, like we do Ganesh Murtis. We just concluded Ganesh festival, concluding by tomorrow by people who practice Anant Chaturdashi. It will be on Tuesday, 10 days of Ganesh Pati. But we do it by hand. That's how you create it. And when Parvati created that out of mud, made a beautiful statue, and she loved Gajanana, so he put the face of an elephant, big head, with the greatest brain. But obviously, as you remember, when you prepared the doll out of mud, there are a lot of impurities there. So sometimes we have to wash it, put it in the clean water to get all the rough edges out. So she put it in the water of Ganges. And Ganges was able to clean up all the impurities from that murti. And Lord Vishnu himself entered into that doll, give it the consciousness, awareness, or chetana. That doll came to life, and the baby became beautiful. I won't tell you all the boring stories beyond that. But again, in that process, Ganga is also considered as Ganesha's mother. So Ganga and Parvati are the two mothers that he has. And if you look at Krishna and Ganesha's weapons that he uses, he uses Sudarshan Chakra, discus, kind of unusual weapon. And Ganesha uses a goad to push us on, a noose to get the things, enemies tied up and directing us in the right direction. The lasso, what we call it. And none of them, Krishna and Ganesha, were fair complexioned. They had darker skins. Krishna wears peacock feathers on his crown. And Ganesha, being a big rider, he rides on peacock. So he is air peacock. So very much similarities. Both of them are warriors, diplomats, philosophers, authors, dancers, and connoisseurs of art. So tremendous similarities between them. The great thing about it is both of them led the armies, but Ganesha is unique. And Kumud loved it so much whenever I discussed with her. Not only he was a leader of armies, but he was the first, Ganesha was the first one to arrange an infantry, not only of men, but also of women. So he created a battalion of women, and the modern battalions in the 20th century have the similarities between what he did 3,000 years ago in the stories and what we see now. What do you mean? His battalion was always 21 people. 20 were the soldiers and one was the captain. And the same standard goes on these days. The battalion can be of 20 to 50 soldiers and one is the captain. Won't bore you about that aspect of it. So basically, these are the very great similarities between Ganesha and Sri Krishna. Now, since our subject matter today is Ganesh Upanishad, Upanishads basically are in the end portion of Vedas, Vedanta. That is, Veda means, of course, means knowledge, Vedas. And it's a sacred literature in Sanskrit for Hindus. And these are considered as apaurusheyas, authorless. And, they are several Vedas, Rigved, Samaved, Yajurved, both Shukla and Krishna, Atharva Ved. Now, Upanishad, we always learned, comes from two different words called Upa and Nishad. Upa means nearby, and Nishad is sitting down quietly, lying down quietly nearby. So Upanishad is something that you sit down at the feet of the enlightened teacher, and whatever is told, narrated, and knowledge is what we considered as Upanishad. But what my teacher taught me, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, is that we should go a little further and then understand that Upanishad means literally Atma Vidya or Brahma Vidya. What he taught me there was Upanishad should not be divided as Upa and Nishad, but instead should be divided as Upa, Ni, Shad. Now make Upa and Ni as two prefixes, and Shad, which comes from the word root Sad. Now, Sad, if you take the root, I have the uptake dictionary underneath my computer here, 3 volumes in the other room with various meanings. There's 6 major meanings of the root Sad. I've taken, one of them is, of course, sit down. The other 3 I picked up, according to his teachings, are Visaranam, Avasadanam, Gamanam, come underneath what word Sad means. What do you mean by that? Visaranam means wearing out or to disintegrate. Avasadanam means putting a total end or total destruction. What do you mean by that? If I happen to cut the tree, I hope don't cut the tree ever, but if you cut the tree, you can say that I cut the tree, disintegrated the tree. But our sadhanam of that tree, not only the tree chopped off, but I dig the ground and take out the complete roots and all. That is total destruction. So basically, Sad includes this knowledge, not only disintegrates, but brings about total destruction. And the third one, which I mentioned, of the meaning of Sad, is called Gamanam, that means reaching out or knowing. But what is that knowing? And where is it going? And that's where you use 2 prefixes that we talked about, Upa and Ni. Upa means close, samip. So closest to oneself, we can say body, mind, intellect, or your eye. So closest to us is nothing but our own Atman. So takes it towards I, Atman. And what is Ni? Ni represents Nishchitam Jnanam. So one knowledge that totally destroys ignorance and takes us closest with that ascertained knowledge, takes us close to the knowledge of the one which is closest to me, that is Atman. So that is self-knowledge, is Upanishad. And that's what Upanishad really means, according to my learning from him. And of course, Shankaracharya has commented on 10 of them. That's why those are considered important Upanishads. But there are about 108 Upanishads. I mean, those 10 he is commented upon is Isha Kena Katha Prashna, Munda Mandukya Titira, Aitareyam Chachandogyam, Brhadaranyakam Tata. So these are the 10 that he commented upon. But trust me, many other Upanishads are just as important. And that brings us to Ganapati Upanishad. And remember, all Upanishads literally have the same basic principle. And what does that mean? Every Upanishad is teaching us exactly the same message, that is Tat Tvam Asi. Now, if you we're getting a little too long about that, but the thing is, if you look at this Ganapati Upanishad, written by Atharvana Rishi, also known as Angir and Ganaka, as I mentioned you. But Atharva Veda is one of the most secular and the Vedas which was written the most recently, if you want to call it, and has lots of good Upanishads inside. What are those Upanishads in that Atharva Veda? Mundaka, Mandukya, Prashna, Kaivalya, and this Ganapati Upanishad, to mention a few of them. And it's interesting to understand why Atharva Veda and Atharvana Rishi are called Atharva. Again, Sanskrit. Na tharvati iti atharvana. The one who does not oscillate, an individual who does not have oscillation of the mind, is atharvana. And that is the author of Ganapati Upanishad. So that's why in Marathi, those who understand Marathi in this audience, tharthartha, atharvanaha, the one who does not vacillate, oscillate, move around, one with a steady vision is Atharvana. By the way, Atharvana is also created with mantras, which were used to start the fire in the wilderness with the 2 sticks that he would use as a guidance. Now, Ganapati Upanishad is favorite of ours, Kumud and Minds, is because just like Bhagavad Gita is not only a yoga, Brahma Vidya, Yoga Shastre, Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade. So not only is Brahma Vidya, but also describes the methodology of reaching the Brahman. So too is Ganapati Upanishad, which also talks about not only the truth about Brahman or Atman, but also gives us the methodology of how to achieve that particular principle. And basically, as Ashalayan was told by Brahmaji, Shraddha Bhakti Dhyana Yogat Avaihi. That means what you have to do is to have total faith, utter faith, total devotion, regular meditations. And when they combined with the guidance of a teacher, you'll be able to get the knowledge. Now, typically, when we start the new Shantipat, there are certain prayers that one sings for every Upanishad, and I would not give you the meanings of those meanings at this time, but the next session I will. But typical mantras which are sung with Shanti mantras with this particular Atharvaveda are sung, they are like this, there are two of them. I'll sing quickly, but I'll describe the meaning in detail later. Om Bhadram Paranebhi Shunuyama Deva Bhadram Pashyema Kshipir Sirai Rangai Stushtumaus Tanuvi Vyashema Devaitam Yadayu. To translate quickly in English, may we hear auspicious words with our own ears and see with our own eyes what is auspicious while engaged in prayers and all these yajnas. May we, with a steady mind, control body and senses, and seeing and hearing nothing but sacred and auspicious, find a life of total fulfillment in the service of Almighty God. Because Almighty God means Janata Janardhan. That means in the service of the human beings. The second mantra also sung simultaneously with that is Om Swastina Indro Vruddhashrava Swastina Pusha Vishwaveda Swastina Staksho Arishtanevi Swastino Bruhaspati Dhatu. He's basically asking blessings from the God. May Lord Indra, whose glory is great, bless us. May all-knowing Pushan bless us. May Taksha place a circle of protection for our well-being. May Bruhaspati, the Guru of gods, bestow the blessings upon us. So basically, we talked about what Upanishad is. We sang the Shanti mantras that we'll discuss in greater detail next time. And this Ganapati Upanishad consists only of 14 mantras. The first 6 are dedicated to describe Ganapati, as one would describe without any attributes or form, Nirguna Nirakararu. The 7th mantra details Ganesh Vidya. 8th mantra details Ganesh Gayatri. The 9th mantra describes him by name, form, and attributes, Saguna Sakararu. The 10th prayer mantra is the heartfelt prayer to Lord Ganapati. And final 4 mantras detail the methodology and the outcome following the regular recitations of these powerful Upanishadic mantras with the dhyana, bhakti, and yoga, the regular mantras. Until one is able to learn the truth of the self being the whole, Atma va idam sarvam, we haven't gotten the true knowledge. Now, the thing is, in constant fear, and we are in the sense of insecurity because we think something else is lurking around us. Tvitiyat bhayam. But once you come to realize there is nothing but Ishvara, and you are no different than Ishvara, that fear is no longer there. So once that duality is gone, you're no longer afraid. And that's the whole purpose of learning these Upanishads in great detail. So until we regain our memory, because remember we knew it, but somebody has to remind us. Smrutir labdha karishye vachanam to 18th chapter, Arjuna says, okay, smrutir labdha. Not that he did not know, but he had forgotten. Thank you for telling Shri Krishna. I regained my memory, and then there is no other entity except awareness, which is an integral part of oneself. And that's the whole purpose of learning the Upanishad in greater detail. Before I conclude today and open up for question and answers, we talked about Upanishad, but we need to talk about Ganapati for a moment, and before taking verse mantra by mantra. Now, the Lord Mahadeva is called Shiva. That means the one who is auspicious or the blessed. For the devotee like me, Lord alone is sacred and auspicious. The creative faculty or the infinite power of the Lord is Shakti, also known as Parvati in Puranas. Remember, in our philosophy, the energy is always feminine. You just look around the house, you know who works. So Ganapati is the offspring of Shiva and Shakti, a combination of attributeless Brahman and ultimate power that originates this universe. So the Ganapati here is Saguna with attributes and has indeed a specific shape or form, akara, but in reality, Ganesha is none different than Brahman himself. Now, Ganapati means Lord of the groups. In this creation of God, all beings, all living beings are existed, but they can only thrive themselves if they are in groups. Each group is called Gana, and Ganapati is Ganesha we're talking about. This healthy attitude of living in groups applies to everybody, includes the gods, human beings, and all other life forms. And all these groups exist in one supreme reality, the Brahman. That is why the one we're going to study is called Ganapati, the Supreme Lord of the Ganas. The same concept is expressed in that popular mantra, the Taittiriya Samhita 2:3 to 3:14, which goes like this. Gananam tva ganapatim havamahe kavim kavinam upamashtam jeshtarajam brahmanam brahmanaspat anashunvantini nisida sadhanam. So every puja starts by this mantra, where you welcome the Lord Ganapati to make any puja, any occasion successful. If you want to translate in English, I know most of you understand Sanskrit, I'll translate for some of you. O Lord of all mantras, we invite you, the Supreme Lord of all groups of universe, Ganapati. You are the supreme among the learned, and your fame has no parallel even amongst the famous individuals. You're the king of the kings. Please, please take your seat in this ritual. Listen to the econium, that means tributes and praises sung by us, and bestow upon us all kinds of wealth, but more importantly, not simply material, but spiritual, with your power and wisdom. That's how you translate this mantra. I mentioned earlier that everybody's in the groups. Let's take some examples. If you take Vasus, they are in a group of eight Ashtavasu. Rudras are 11, Shankara being one of them. Adityas are 12, Surya is one of them. Ashwinis are 2. Maruts are a group of 7 subgroups. Each subgroup consists of 7 members, making 49. Sunlight is a composition of 7 colors. Galaxies exist in clusters. Planets constitute a system. At micro level, atoms together form molecules, which in turn have a tertiary structure of their own assemblies. And now we understand, Anand, I'm sure if you're there listening, that atoms are a group of quarks. There are no independent entities in this creation. They're only systems, groups, and clusters. And it's a well-known fact that man is a social animal. And through our medical research, we know that isolation of an infant from any physical or other contacts in early life will stunt the individuals, the baby's growth, physical, emotional, as well as intellectual for the infant. That's why you need contact. You have to be in a group. So man is not no man is an island, as Swami Tattva said. Really, no jiva is an island. We indeed are an integral part of the whole system and none different than Brahman. I'm going to stop at this particular stage because what we discussed so far is what my understanding through the teachings, what Upanishad is. I talked to you about Ganapati, what it means, talked about things that I thought will interest everybody, express my gratitude to all my teachers. We talked about the fourth sthiti Turiya Avastha. We talked about similarities between birth, between Sri Krishna and Ganesha. We talked about what Vedas mean and what Upanishad means. And I'll stop at this particular time and ask for comments and questions. Thank you.
Well, I found this to be very complex as well, but I did come away with one insight that I appreciated a great deal. And it goes back to my own experience in India. In 1965-66, I was a Fulbright lecturer in Tirupati. And during that year, I had occasion to look at a variety of PhD theses that students in the department had written. And a significant number of them had a dedication to Ganapati, as well as to their parents.
Uh-huh.
And I had always interpreted that as reflecting the understanding of Ganesh as a remover of obstacles. But you added a whole new dimension to that because you associated him with knowledge and learning.
Yep.
That's a connection that I had never come across before. And so now when I think about those dedications, they have a much richer meaning than I realized up until today. So thank you.
Good. The thing is, that's the reason why Ganesha is always there. I mean, he's the most knowledgeable God. And that's why Ganapati on the masculine side and Saraswati on the feminine side, the energy of wisdom. So if you have a combination of Ganesha and Saraswati in you, you have achieved it. Of course, each entity divine is complete in that form. A different facet of personality showing off. So, well, thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Dr. Sane, I have a question. This is Jaya.
Hi, Jaya.
Hi. I missed a few minutes in the beginning, so you may have already answered this, but Atharva Shirsha, is it summarized Atharva Veda? Is it, what is it? Can you tell me how the relationship is between Atharva Shirsha and Atharva Veda?
It's exactly the same.
Okay.
Atharva Veda is Veda.
Uh-huh.
Atharva Veda has lots of Upanishads in it. One of them, of course, is Mundaka, Mandukya, Prashna, Kaivalya, and this is Ganapati. Ganapati Atharva Shirsha also known as Ganapati Atharva Shirsha. But again, it's got 14 mantras. We sing it without understanding the deep meaning of it. We're rattling it off. But what we are going to discuss over the series of discussions, Jaya, is understanding each and every meaning and the background for it. So that's what we just started. And as you saw, I just discussed only two words, Ganapati and Upanishad.
So is Atharva Shirsha part of Atharva Veda or it is composed separately?
Let me repeat again. Atharva Veda contains at the end several Upanishads. All those Upanishads, as I mentioned, Mundak, Mandukya, Prashna, Kaivalya, Ganapati, or Ganapati Upanishad, if you want to call it, or Atharva Shirsha, the end portion of Atharva Veda. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, can I just ask one thing? Atharva Veda is the last of the Vedas. I mean, we know Rig Veda is the first, but is there some sequencing here? Then, of the four Vedas, Atharva Veda is, did I hear you say that or did I mistake that?
No, the thing is, everybody talks about when Vedas were written. So everybody's got a different idea as to the exact timing of Vedas. So that is something that to be remembered. Let me look at my notes if any specific reference is there. Otherwise, I'll discuss it next time. But Rig Vedas were the oldest one, and the most recent were the Atharva Vedas. But starting from 1500 to 2000 BC was the Rigveda's time, and Atharvaveda is somewhere between 1200 BC to 900 BC, depending upon whose reference you go with. So that is the way it goes. So it's one of the most recent that means 3,000 years old. But basically contains a lot of secular things which do not consist. I mean, other Vedas have it too, but this one has the most secular description there. So if you want to see the Rig Veda, some people talk about 1500 to 1100 BC. Samaveda is 1200 to 800. Yajurveda is 1100 to 800. Atharvaveda is 1000 to 800. Depending upon you take it. You can remember it's pretty ancient, almost as old as I am. So, so it's very, very old things. But again, none of these old things which are apaurushaya have so much of information and knowledge, and sometimes people shun away because it's old. But basically, many of the old things contain so much more, and that's how sometimes the youngsters tend to neglect the seniors because they are getting old, not realizing they have so much of life experiences and wisdom, and they should learn a great deal from them. So that's what Atharvaveda. I didn't ask any question, Prasanna. I'm listening to you.
No, Shishi, everything was fine.
Good.
I'm getting a lot of feedback here. Just a minute.
Sure.
Just a minute.
I want your comments. You're the scholar.
Yeah, no, the only thing I find about Ganapati is he seems like a very easy person to get to know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I can take some liberties with him, which I would dare not with Ishvara or Narasimha or anybody else.
Yep.
So he seems like he's able to invite you. So he's always inviting you. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's never got. He's very kind. He forgives your mistake. That's the fun part about it.
Yes.
But he does not like if you are mean or hurting anybody else. That is something he doesn't like. So I mean, he's like a typical mother to me, because the mother is able to swallow a lot of your aprad or mistakes, but that is okay. But she still loves you. So that's how Ganesha feels, like a cuddly guy. So
I also feel that if you're very egotistical, Ganapati has a very easy way to solve that.
Yeah.
He will take the ego and turn it into a mouse and sits on it.
And it was long before the computers came too.
So, Dr. Sane, I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you, but that's okay. So wonderful to hear your voice.
Yeah. So I'm not knowledgeable enough to ask any questions.
I don't know why I'm getting so much of it.
Though you put underestimating yourself, you know a lot.
So at these temple tours, I always tell them how intelligent Ganapati is, about this race between him and his brother going around the universe. I'm sure all of you know that story, that Parvati and Shiva, they said, let's have a race between, Ganesha and...
Oh, yeah.
And,
he was smart. With the parents are the ultimate universe, so going around them 3 times. But the good thing that you didn't tell me the story is that, well, while Kartikeya was going on air peacock flying away, he was eating modaks here, Ganesha, and waiting for him to come. So I like that part too.
So now they really appreciate when Ganesha says that Mom and Dad, you're my universe.
Exactly. And he meant it too, because he knew basically Shiva and Shakti. Shiva is the nondescript form of Brahman, and Shakti is the ultimate universal energy. So in that particular sense, that's exactly what he meant. He's absolutely right.
But one question I have is that in this ritual or tradition, after Ganesh Chaturthi, they take the statue and submerge it in water. What is the significance of that, do you know?
Well, I think that is a festival which is done on the day of his birth. I don't know if, when exactly you joined me. I talked about different Puranas talking about different days that he was born. He's born Magh, Jyeshtha, and Bhadrapada Chaturthi. But I described those tithis are basically for festivals to remember. The reason why you do that, Mohan, is you have to remember these great teachers of ours on a particular day, because that gets an opportunity for us to remind ourselves and our children, the next futures, generations, what really signifies. So then you start creating the image from the very beginning, how the creation is. So you start with the mud and create a murti. That's how we do it in our temple, if you remember. We color them and decorate them, praise them, feed them like you do as a human being, becomes one of the part of it. But at the same time, the mortal form of everybody has to be, what do you call, disposed of in due course. The deha or sharira, depending upon disintegrate or cremate. So basically that's deha or sharira. So that is done. But again, as you do that, for the people who want to advance further, have to realize that that is just the mortal form of that murti that you created with your hand. But the energy or the chetana that is present all aware, the awareness is there forever. So, and when your children, we are basically inspiring them to understand what Ganesha, Holly, wonderful God he is, you celebrate. They understand a few things, but as they grow up and start asking questions, what does it really mean? And then if they pursue that thought process, they get lucky enough to get good teacher who will take them to the ultimate level. So that's how the tradition starts. So just to remind the great entities, individuals that were important in our life. That's the way I look at it. Yeah. Anybody else can add to it too. So
thank you, Dr. Sane. Very, very interesting lecture. Very insightful.
Well, thanks again. I'm so happy you were able to join.
Thank you.
Namaste, Dr. Sane.
Hi, Arun.
So, Gana, word Gana is also a unit of army. It is used to be the Shiva's army. So, yeah. So it's not only just, philosophical, it's physical. He was chief of army for Shiva.
Yeah.
As well. And second is, there is a god of war in Roman, which is called Janus, which came from basically when Ganesha was brought from India to Rome, because we had a lot of business over there, and they said, this guy is loved, so this god is loved. So this Janus is also a god of war for them. And the word, our month of January is named after Janus. So when we say that January, which is part of our calendar, English calendar, is basically origin is Ganesha.
That's good. I didn't know exactly that. I'm glad that they're starting with January as number one, batting at number one position. Yeah.
Yeah, and Janus was the god of war for Romans, where it had two heads. And his temple was, gates were open when Roman army used to be out for conquest.
Okay. And
only once in a lifetime, this temple gates were closed. Otherwise, they were always on the war. That is the story.
Like the United States, you mean?
Roman army was always out conquering. So that's one of the story I can say.
Oh, that's interesting. Very interesting. But again, if it was travel all over the world, because our business for people from Indian continent was all over the world. People don't realize it. We traveled all over. People came from outside. I mean, about 34 or 35 different countries. Students came to learn at Takshashila and other places. So we indeed were the seat of wisdom, which spread. So again, it's not our wisdom. Remember, whatever we discuss is Rishi Vidya. It has come through the scholars over centuries, and I think we're lucky enough to learn from them and continue on. So, and by the way, before anybody asks any questions, I'm wearing a little support for my oxygen. I never smoked, I never had any problems, but according to my doctors, that extra supply of oxygen will help me. And that's why I'm wearing it. I'm doing fine. Thank you.
One quick comment, Dr. Sane.
Hey, Bala, so good to see you.
Good to see you
Give
too.
special hi to Anandi, please.
There is a, in South India, southern part of India, there is a Ganesh temple around every corner. I mean, many of them, small, mid-sized, large. Interestingly, just before the exams, that place is flooded.
Oh, yeah.
All the students, they want to make sure that they give obeisance to.
Oh, yeah. But he was able to, he's kind of very easily please God. Even the last minute welcome was fine. As long as you remember, I'll take it.
Exactly. Just an interesting tidbit.
No, I think that's it doesn't feel like somebody way up in the pedestal. He feels like one of us. He feels very close to you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, guys?
Very good talk, Dada.
Are you in India or are you
Yes,
back?
no, I just got back last night. So just wanted to say that I was, after many, many years, I actually witnessed the whole 10 days of Ganapati festival in Pune.
That's good.
Right from probably 2-3 weeks before that, all the Ganesh murtis were the shops filled with that, and the whole, how it gears up for the celebration till the end. The processions for the Visarjan, everything I experienced. It's hard to sum up in words.
But by the way, thanks to you for eating modak on my behalf.
I did. Every modak I remembered you.
Thanks a lot. Got to make up when I get to see you there.
Usually, the people who are not, say, believer in Ganesha, or the other from other religion, they say, how can a elephant's head fit into man's head? which is like obvious thing. That's okay. So one thing is it's symbolic, right? It's the ego which was cut off, not the head.
Yeah,
by his dad.
But again, it's just a question of if you look at it. I had the privilege to be a visiting professor in Africa, and was able to go through Serengeti Plains a few times and enjoyed the elephants there. But the memory of elephants is amazing. For example, when I was in that place, I went to a hospital where they took care of the animals. And from wilderness, a mother elephant was bringing her cub with her to the hospital without being brought in. Why she had brought in? She wanted to introduce her cub to the workers in that hospital because she was an infant when she was left around whatever reason. The people in that hospital had taken care of her and left her in the wilderness. So the memory is great. The head is big. Memory is fantastic. And, there are so many different values of Ganesha. The biggest mammalian brain, if you remember, and biggest ears where you can hear everything. So you are able to hear anybody's request to come and help. So they're symbolically so different. You're right. But you got to, but again, when we talk about these big heads and ears, really speaking, at the spiritual level is nothing but total awareness that goes through the entire creation. So, and creation is just a minute part of Brahman anyway. So.
Yeah, in Indian civilization, we have been so close to elephants, taming them, living with them,
exactly,
making them as a family member. So it's like a pet, right?
Riding on the back of them to go to Jaipur.
Yeah,
Jaipur Fort.
It was the tanks for our armies.
Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, if you see all Mahabharata war, there's a division of elephant army too. Yeah.